Joe, I've been told that war never changes. How was that for Ron Perlman? Anybody like Ron Perlman?
I think it's there. I'm much more of a where is my goddamn shoe kind of guy. But we have our different tastes in Ron Perlman.
Dude, I just gotta say, the whole Fallout thing, as a fan, like being a fan of Fallout, we played the games back in 97, 98. A friend of ours lent it to us. We didn't really truly understand what was going on. We were like, is this like an XCOM kind of thing? What is this? Mm-hmm. And gotta say, I probably dedicated some early brain power to that game, and then never again. At least never again until the early 2000s when 3 came out. So
Yeah.
Gotta say the war never changes, and just the love for the property. I gotta say, when Amazon announced that they were going to make an adaptation, it's suddenly the stand in me was like, wait a second, I know a lot about this. This feels like a gift. We must use it.
It is definitely one of those things where, especially with video game properties, where you hear a very cherished game is getting some sort of adaptation through film or a TV series, and there is that that initial excitement with just touch of oh god, they could probably fuck this up really good. And if you have not had a chance to actually check out Fallout yet, and you haven't been with a good chunk of the community and just went through all 8 episodes in a sitting or two, listen to us today, see if you want to check it out, or don't listen to us and check it out, and then come back and finish listening to us because we could use it. Yeah.
Just like week 1 of season 4, it's some spoilers are going to happen here. We're not going to make it clearly a spoiler heavy as maybe the Ghostbusters series, but we are going to talk about Fallout Season 1 by Amazon on Prime, whatever you want to call it. And it was one of those decisions that we made where we're like, you know what? We can't always live in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. Joe, life happened after that, and evolving a little bit here. We're covering new stuff. New things.
Yeah, and it is exciting to do something new, and like you said, life continues on since then. So you have to be up for trying new things from franchises that you enjoy. You can't get a new trailer and instantly just hate something right away. You got to give it the old college try, and I think we have both done that with Fallout. And I would have to say, so far, 2 out of 2 hosts approve. But how about we get a little bit into the dissecting part of this, where we actually kind of go into the background over how did this whole thing happen, because it usually isn't so easy as, hey, I like that thing you got there, let's make it into a motion picture, let's make movies and let's get rich, we'll be great, we'll make billions, as I sit there and have my cigar. It doesn't always happen that way. There's some give and take, there's some red tape to be cut through, and I assume a back to be stabbed. Who knows? So, Mark, walk us through, how did this come to be?
Well, before the bombs fell, Joe, we had some producers who were kind of getting together here, and one of them that I wanted to mention specifically was a man by the name of Jonathan Nolan, who you might recognize, Joe, the brother of Christopher Nolan. And these guys know a thing or two about creating films. I mean, they've made some sleeper hits. Some things you might be familiar with, Joe.
1 or 2. Still waiting on that banger, but they'll get there.
I'm going to say, they're not winning awards or anything. No one's been recognized by the Academy with that brother duo.
No.
Yeah, by the way, we're joking, everyone.
Joking, very talented filmmakers.
Yeah, just so you know. But to your point, Joe, the Fallout universe has been popular for a very long time, and many people have wanted to adapt it, of course, after the overwhelming success of Fallout 3 back in 2008. And of course, Todd Howard, might not notice that man who's usually memed quite a bit, over at Bethesda, making some video games, not all of them well received, but the man may know how to re-release a game, but what he doesn't know necessarily is how to adapt one to the small screen. Mm-hmm. So he actually took some chances with not taking chances, going, I think I'm going to pass on that offer. We don't want to have a 2005 Doom situation here where people watch it and go, I don't even know if I want to play your games anymore, sir. It was that
Yeah.
bad.
No, you Dwayne the Rock Johnson, usually a pretty like just like guaranteed, like I don't want to say a home run, but at least a base hit. And Doom kind of felt like, a sacrifice bunt where everyone just ended up getting thrown out.
I was gonna
So
say,
who needs that? Who needs that again?
sack bunt triple play is what happened there, man. But hey, clearly Jonathan Nolan shows up right in front of Todd Howard. He's working the shaft, Joe. He's minding the stepchildren, and this thing gets past the line. They're like, dude, we love what you suggested just now. I finished. We're going to make a TV show.
Ooh.
And so we'll talk about a little bit about the idea that Jonathan Nolan introduced, of course. But at the same time, I do want to recognize two unique people here. One by the name of Graham Wagner, who's a producer that a lot of folks may not know, but you're going to absolutely, I said absolutely, like there's an O-U-B. You should absolutely recognize some of the things he's worked on, which would be Portlandia, Baskets, Mulaney, and Silicon Valley. Joe, I'm not sure how familiar you are with these shows.
Oh, I have heard of at least all of them.
Okay.
So,
And to his credit, Wagner has worked on some very good shows that have a sense of humor that still have an air of seriousness to them. And so at any given time, you could be laughing at something and then stop and go, wow, I felt something there. That
yeah.
that was serious. Yes. Yeah.
Because it brings out the, yes,
Yeah.
the inner Goldblum has shined through.
Yeah, 1 minute you're going to be going, ha, 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 and then you're going to be going like, oh, yes, that's interesting there, what you do. Yeah. He's very much good at doing that, and that's why when I heard about Graham Wagner, I was like, I know that name, and to me, I went, I'm actually fine with you running this show. And so he ended up bringing a friend along with him, though, by the name of Geneva Robertson Dorrit, who actually was a screenwriter, Joe, for the 2018 Tomb Raider cinematic reboot, which in a lot of ways was like a shot-for-shot take of the video game, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where, like, it was enjoyable if you played the video game. And it's one of those things where, like, if you go too direct, it kind of fails a little bit. But this is one where I still thought it was enjoyable. So I think they picked someone who was in some realms, people think that maybe he did it right, or maybe he was just a little off, and has a chance to make it all well. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is how a script or how a pitch gets successful. Not with a stork, but when four people, 3 producers and 1 screenwriter get together and care about each other a whole heck of a lot, they make a show.
I mean, you can usually tell when a show or a property, I would just say in general, has that sense of care attached to it, right? It's not always about having a statue of a deceased actor right in the front of the camera that zooms out a little bit. These are about the finer touches, right? This is about having a poster in the background that references a type of character that you don't see in the show, right? This is about showing a product behind somebody where you're like going, the fans of the series go, I know exactly what that is. We're not talking about it, but it's right there and I can see it, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, before we even get to the show, there have been a lot of those little things in the series. Just a lot of fun little, like, things that if you've played the games, it doesn't give anything away, because not all of them are necessarily like big plot devices. Some of them are just fun callouts to the various games in the series. And this is also coming from someone who hasn't played all of the games. I've actually never finished a Fallout game. I've played 3 and watched friends play New Vegas. And that's where my Fallout my Fallout experience really lies. But that being said, that doesn't matter, because you could have no idea what Fallout is, and you could just take this as a hey, it's another post-apocalyptic show. Let's give it a shot. And this is where the show shines, because even if you, again, like you said, you have no experience or knowledge that's going on in the video game, it has something that's called good plot structure. It's just kind of well thought out with telling this overarching narrative, and like a lot of shows try to do, you've got several like A stories, B stories, even C stories that kind of like weave and twine together, and they all come to a head along with this major driving narrative going on. And I think part of what makes it work well is that it's not stretched to like 22 episodes, so you can get a nice concise story with the time you have there. But I think it's time that we actually get a little specific here and dive into some of that good storytelling and plot structure.
Yeah, one thing I appreciated quite a bit about it was that right away we didn't get this type of Game of Thrones type of thing, right? We didn't end up getting introduced to like 19 different named characters that are all in the title card, and you're wondering, who do I follow? Very simplistic. We focused on 3 characters, which show, I think, just the right amount, especially for people that may not be familiar with the series. But they're all original characters on top of that, too, which is really great, because if you're just coming to the series for the first time, you know nothing about them. You might know about the factions that they're from and some of the things they've gone through, which would bring us, though, to where the show begins, which is the character of Cooper Howard, Joe, played by Walton Goggins, who Sons of Anarchy fans would immediately recognize. He looks great in a dress. He is fantastic. And I got to say, dude, seeing him on screen was wonderful. And honestly, I was kind of glued to what he was doing, because the character of Cooper Howard, I wouldn't say is like necessarily flawed in the beginning. He's an honorable man. He's an actor, and he's working as a kind of a cowboy western. He's like a John Wayne kind of character, just set in the Fallout universe. And the only thing I think that could have made this perfect, Joe, is if the show premiered on October 23rd, which is the day the bombs fell in 2077, which is when Cooper Howard is shown in the very beginning. We find out that the vault boy who sticks his thumb up, he's doing that because he needs to know how far away the actual warhead hit and whether or not he's in danger. And it turns out that's what Cooper Howard is known for, is giving the thumbs up. So watching his character working at like a petting zoo at a birthday party, it's like, he's on hard times. You know things aren't great. And they're not going to get any better because, well, the bombs fall. We see them literally exploding around him. And I got to say, Joe, I've seen the bombs fall in the video games. And yeah, it's this like crazy sequence. And you usually are like, yeah, okay. But Joe, what was your feeling when you actually got to see the nuclear devastation, live action, for the first time?
Well, before I quite touch on that, when you mentioned that things weren't going great for our boy Cooper, I would say things that were going really great was just their adaptation of like the Fallout vibe at this time. Because if you're unfamiliar with the video game series, it is supposed to have like the pre everything goes wrong era is supposed to look like the future that the 1950s thought we would have. So it's not set in the 50s, even though it kind of looks that way, because you still have this idea that like people really like westerns, and that's like the fun thing of the day. And you have this bright, glimmering, chrome, future-looking like thing. Everything looks like a spaceship that was made in the 60s. And if you look closely enough, you can see a few fun little Easter eggs in this opening scene. But when you have that beautiful backdrop and this great setting that purposely encapsulates what the video game is doing and what, the Red Scare era America was hoping to achieve, and then you get the bombs and you see it all just go to hell. It's, it hits pretty hard, because I think it perfectly shows like the fear that came out of the nuclear age beginning. Is that this is what everyone was afraid of, and it didn't do it in an overly dramatic way. Some things that did it well with a touch of drama is like Terminator 2, when you see like holding onto the fence and then right now it's a skeleton, and it worked really well for the 80s. And this is able to achieve a very similar feel, but without like the hard visual of seeing like someone just reduced to a skeleton at the time. The way they have bomb drop, and then it's like, oh, you kind of let it sink in, and then a second one hits, and a third and a fourth, and et cetera, et cetera. It is the right amount of like ominous, scary, and real. Like there's weight to this when it's happening.
That emotion was there for me too. Like and I knew it was going to happen, right? I mean, I've been playing these games for almost 3 decades. Like I knew some shit was going to go down. But to your point, Joe, yeah, that 1950s alternate history is really where I think it kind of sets up this feeling of things are going to go wrong, because in the Fallout universe, the 1950s is where this alternate reality kind of spins off, and they've miniaturized like nuclear reactor technology. There's a lot of advancements that happen which kind of cause this alternate reality to begin. And so you see advances in robotics and cars that still look 1950-ish, but they can obviously perform a lot better. So there's a lot of these little nuances that they kept from the 50s, but at the same time, a lot of us are thinking the 50s weren't great. We did have that scare of nuclear devastation the whole time. And similar to what happens in the Fallout universe, people are seeing the minutes to midnight on their TVs, and they're still dialing it off. They're like, let's just turn that off. This is a birthday party.
Let's just ignore it. Yeah. It's about, let's be in the moment. Let's be happy.
Yeah, right?
Or we could get into a basement. One of the things. And speaking of getting into a basement, this is where we now get to, after everything's gone down, we get to meet our next of our Fallout Big Three here, and that's Lucy. She is a character who lives in Vault number 33. And, well, this is where it's kind of great, because there's some ambiguity that's set up by going to Lucy next. And we clearly see that bombs have fallen, and now we've got people living underground. And you get this, you get talk in the background about, and even very quickly in the foreground, of saying how, the plan is to repopulate the planet as soon as the radiation level's gone down and it's safe to go back up. And you see people adjusting, or who have adjusted, to living life underground. And they're doing it in a as glamorous as they can sort of lifestyle. So, Mark, what do you have to say about, or what do you think about the vault life that we see here?
Unfortunately, I know a lot of the lore behind the vaults themselves and really what they're governed by. And I'm not going to say it's entirely wholesome. At the same time, don't want to ruin everything. Once again, this is one of those spoilerish reviews that Joe and I have done in the past. So for me, I kind of knew one shoe was going to drop at some point, right? You just know it. There's going to be an issue there. But the idea of the vaults, though, was always interesting to me, because even in the games, you see people who are still living that 1950s ideal just underground and away from other people other than the same families that they've known, while they've been stuck underground, and basically waiting for the radiation and the devastation to die down so that they can, like you said, repopulate the Earth. So right away, that vibe, knowing what already happened just a few moments ago, and seeing these people live the way that they do without a whole lot of concerns, they've got food, they've got lodging, they're comfortable-ish, right?
Yeah.
It's a similar type of dysfunction in your head where you're like, there's no way things are that perfect. They never can be. And sure enough, in the Fallout universe, they absolutely are not.
No.
Yeah.
And it is fun in that it is this very again, things seem kind of cheery and hunky-dory from a very glossy veneer of a surface that they're trying to build with the vault, but then very quickly turns into, if you've ever seen Blast from the Past with Brendan Fraser, Once Upon a Time, where he's got this very he's very innocent in that he's been basically raised in this bunker his whole life. He's only known his mom and his dad now that he's into his 30s, but so he's he's too good for this world. But when you see the vault people, that they crank that up to 11. These people are innocent to the point of ignorance is absolute bliss for them. They have no idea about the world like above them, but they think they do. And you also see very quickly the things that, maybe Blast in the Past didn't want to talk about because it was meant to be a fun, like, rom-com. So when they thought of coming like, hey, we've got a bunch of people living in a vault, how do we make more people? Then you find out it's kind of almost like, a breeding program in a group of zoos, and it gets very weird very fast.
It sure does. I mean, there's only so much that can happen down there because it's not like you have new people who are coming in and out to influence, right? Which does happen at some point, though. We are introduced to another set of survivors, but that's something we don't want to get too far into because really what I want to end on with this is that Ella Purnell as Lucy, I mean, she's meant to be the main character for a reason.
Yeah.
And what I love about her in contrast to, Cooper Howard is that Cooper Howard was a good guy who ends up becoming AKA the Ghoul because he's suffered from radiation. His body has changed and he looks zombified, right, in the future. And you can see the contrast between who he was and who he becomes because he becomes basically like a bounty hunter in the future. Very feared. He's lost a lot of his humanity. But Lucy is not the same type of character, though. Like you said, she's got these ideals and these things that nobody else on the surface is going to have. And that's where the clashing begins. Because just like all the Fallout games, guess what? Vault dwellers have to leave the vault. They just have to. And so when she begins to leave, I think what's really great about this is that we didn't get to really see a whole lot about Cooper and what happens in between, except for small, very well-placed contextual flashbacks, right? But there's still like 150 years to 200 years just worth of stuff we didn't see.
Yeah.
But for Lucy, we get to see how each instance of the wasteland changes her. And that's where I think a lot of the value of this show is seeing just how much she slips from who she was.
Yeah, and at the same time, it almost reminds me of like Red Sun Superman, of how you can see the character like landing in Soviet Russia instead of like Heartland America, and how that will change a lot about the character and who they are, but still somehow there is some unwavering Superman aspect to him. And I think that's also kind of like what you see with Lucy, is that while you do see her change and like things go like when she figures out what life on the surface is actually like, there are some things that she just kind of refuses to bend on. So it is interesting as we go along. And also, I do want to point out, Mark has seen all 8 episodes, and I have not at the time of this recording. So I'm interested to see how much things change even from this part of the commentary. But no, like you said, Purnell is definitely the star of the show. She takes the scene basically whenever she's on it, and not in a way of like she completely like just steals the attention from everyone else there, but you feel like the scene does surround her and her character whenever she is on the story. She's never at any point written or performing as a secondary character, and it's everything. It is like her acting ability, her like just like her overall story, and her, I don't know if it's like her like how she's written or what she does with the script itself. When she starts complaining about a character and how they can't be all that great because they steal dads, the fact that she would steal and associated with a person, both shows like the character's desperation and innocence at the same time. And while we could sit here and talk about Lucy, our main character, I think it's important to get to our final of our big 3, and that is Maximus, who is in the Brotherhood of Steel. Which, if you are familiar with if you're familiar with the show, you'll be excited to hear about the Brotherhood of Steel. If you've never played Fallout before, but maybe have seen 1 or 2 like games on a shelf, that what you've seen is likely the Brotherhood of Steel, because they are typically the cover art for most of these games.
They're easy to market. They look cool. I mean, who doesn't want to wear a giant suit of armor? This is why Iron Man is successful, guys. Everybody loves it. But I will say that Aaron Moten, who plays Maximus, I will say that it does suck a little bit for him because Goggins and Purnell are just so well played. I mean, or I should say as actors, they play their role so well that he's the only one that I feel like he's going to be in the background. He just is, because his character isn't meant to be the hero. His character is meant to be someone who aspires to greatness, right? Because he's basically, for lack of a better term, an initiate in the Brotherhood of Steel, who is this militant presence, right, in the wasteland, who we won't go through all of the lore for them, because trust me, I could. Not going to. But they basically are, for lack of a better term, they're kind of a cult of people who are trying to recover technology from the past and use it for their own purposes, whether it's, I mean, I would say good to neutral good the majority of the time. But one thing I found interesting about the series, though, was how they were going to depict the Brotherhood of Steel, because in the video games, we do get some contrasting factions within the Brotherhood across the different games. I mean, at times they feel cultish, even though they've got the structure of a military organization, but at other times that bends a little bit. And that's what people kind of got pissed off about with the Fallout 3 game, was that the Brotherhood, like, they're kind of like the Big Lebowski of the Brotherhood of Steel, the Washington, D.C. group. So I was not expecting this Brotherhood to be like, well, that's like your opinion, man. You know, like, I was not expecting them to be that way. But I mean, dude, for the TV show, the Brotherhood, they just kind of feel like assholes with suits on. I mean, they did not really give them any rose-colored glasses to look through.
No, not at all. And I think that's also kind of what makes this character of Maximus be someone who's naturally just going to kind of be in the periphery. Not peripheral's mean, but if you had a podium, the three main characters, he's third place. And a lot of it is just having to do with his character being his character. Because, like Mark was pointing out, that like the Brotherhood is kind of like just a big old bag of culty dicks. They are religious zealots with like the best technology of the time, and they will use it to their advantage, even against other people within their own group. So you have this character who other characters say, like, you know, he wouldn't hurt a fly, that he's picked on quite a bit, and the character himself isn't very loud. Like, he's kind of got this hushedness to his voice and his delivery of how he's doing the character. And like that's actually very good for the character, because that's who he's supposed to be. He is this, you know, hardened mouse, if that makes any sense. He's figured out how to live in the above world, and has aspirations for doing good, and like looks up to the Brotherhood quite a bit. But at the same time, because of his rather timid nature, he's reserved over doing things. Even when he takes extreme actions, he's big for those moments, and then reverts to being this quieter character again. And when you do that around, you know, Lucy and Cooper, you're gonna get put in the background just naturally.
And it's not Moten's fault either. That's the acting is really good. Like, he actually balances the struggle between like trying to be heroic, but then kind of living a lie at the same time. So he does that really, really well. And I think the only thing that could be a turnoff is that some people might be like, "Oh, this is a Diary of a Wimpy Wastelander. What am I watching here?" You know, and it is a little. At first, you're like, yeah, like the other characters are going through maybe a more deliberate growth throughout like the first 3 to 4 episodes, whereas he's kind of like, okay, I'm taking this step right now. I'm taking this light step here. I'm taking another one. And his character kind of falls into things as opposed to like driving into things, you know? So to some people, I could see how that could be a turnoff, or maybe he's just not your favorite character. But at the core of this first season, though, this is truly Lucy's and Cooper's story, right? We're getting a ton of character development on Lucy's front, where you get to see where she is from starting Pistol to who she ends up becoming in episode 8. And then with Cooper, you see who he already is. And then we go back and start to slowly see this is what he was. And so like for Goggins, you're like, dude, kudos to like playing 2 completely different versions of the same guy. Like you knocked it out of the park, dude. Holy shit. And for a guy I already liked, I'm just like, I didn't think I could like you more, but here I am. I can only get so erect, Goggins. Okay.
All right. Before I think some of the best ways to really kind of tie up this episode is going over some of the things on this above ground world, or I guess really any part of the world that they just kind of do really well in the show. So like we said, the characters are done really well, and this initial world was done really well. But one thing that I think we'd be remiss not to talk about is really seeing that contrast of life underground versus the life above ground, and how we can see like really just how much of a shelter the vaults are compared to the horror that's going on at the top of the surface. And it is not like blunt post-apocalyptic horror. It's very not Mad Max, which is nice. Not in the fact that like I hate Mad Max, because that's not true, but it's nice that they do it differently. That they can still have the same idea of the world's gone to hell in a handbasket, but it's not all like, you know, huffing spray paint and saying things are chrome and shiny. So, Mark, what do you think is done really well when the characters are trying to navigate these two very different worlds of the show?
Well, and this is once again one of those concepts that I think a fan would really love, and a person just getting introduced to it can also appreciate, which is the idea that Fallout in itself isn't like a horror game. You know, it's in the very beginning, it's a strategy RPG. Later on, it becomes a first-person shooter with RPG elements, and it kind of tinkers from there. But the whole time that you're exploring the wastelands, the thing is, dude, you're going to see varying tones of things. So that could be light violence to hyper violence. That could be, you know, a little bit of subtle humor. Sometimes it can be in-your-face humor. And it changes with each game. Like, from Fallout 1 to Fallout 2, holy shit, the zaniness was cranked up like 100% for 2. And in 3, though, it became more of a receptacle for like pop culture references, similar to what Bethesda Game Studios is known for. So the whole idea of that, though, when you put it in a blender, becomes this idea, Joe, that you mentioned. You have this horrific and just war-torn backdrop that you're exploring, but weird things are still going to happen in it, man. I mean, this is still the planet. I mean, Joe, you and I drive like an hour west of where we live. You're going to find some weird folk out there.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're not wearing pants, and they're just kind of talking in a direction. And it's like, I get that. That would still exist in the wasteland, wouldn't it?
Oh, my God. Please stay by your wife. I'm sick. You won't have to put up with me very long.
Yeah.
What a line. What a line there, guy. Like, just be with me for a little bit. I swear I'll die soon.
But seriously though, that's a taste of Fallout for people who haven't seen it. It's this idea that at times you feel safe, and then in a moment's notice, suddenly you're like, dude, I don't feel comfortable at all, and I'm in danger. You know, it's like that. That's a gameplay experience for Fallout. You could go from 3 different genres of gameplay within 10 minutes. That's how the show can progress at times.
Yeah, and like you pointed out, it doesn't matter whether it is the human world that is going to do that to you or the natural world that's going to do that to you, because you get this like again, that zany mix of weird, comical, and yet very scary when you find out that there are people like going around like, you know, harvesting bodies for food. There's one dude out there just, you know, fucking chickens, and he's not even trying to teach kids to read while doing it. He's just doing it for the fun or the enjoyment of it all. But when you have all of that happening, and of course, you know, people killing each other, and then you have the ghouls, people who are transformed by the irradiated wasteland that are there, so that human world's gone to crap. But then when you see what's happened to the natural world, and you get these just bizarre and terrifying creatures, that every time you look back at them, you see something even weirder about them that's creepier. So when you get, are they gulpers?
Yeah.
That's not right. It's a gulper, yeah.
Yep.
And it looks like, hey, this thing's just a really big salamander. Yeah, kind of crazy that it's an axolotl that is the size of a fucking small house, and it's just going to, you know, eat you whole because it doesn't have any teeth. But then when you look at where the teeth should be, and it looks like, oh, he's just got like a bunch of weird little tentacle feelers on the way down.
Fingers. Literal human fingers.
Human fingers. It's like, whoa, no, thank you. No, thank you. I don't want to be anywhere near this thing. So seeing all of I guess the twistedness throughout this world is done very well. Which I have to say, like if I have to compare this to another series that tried doing this Twisted Metal, does it far better than. I think I got maybe 3 episodes in Twisted Metal and I was done. And it sucks because you have good people like Anthony Mackie and I think it's Stephanie Beatrice. Mm-hmm. She was in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Yeah, fantastic actors, and they forced the comedy at every turn, and it's just like meh. I don't know. It just didn't work. And it was granted like the video game premise. Like there's way more to Fallout as opposed to Twisted Metal, which is just cars bashing into each other, no holds barred style. But Fallout just gets the feel better. Instead of having trying to be like forced humor everywhere, it's funny but bleak, and then just really fucking bleak. And it does both of those things very well.
I think to the credit of Jonathan Nolan, very much to some of the chops that he has that we were sarcastically not mentioning, the character progression of Fallout Season 1 is great to watch because you have varying levels of characters who are prepared and kind of know what to do with what they're facing, right? And each one displays where they're kind of at on that trajectory, right? One person's lived in the waste, they know what they're doing. One person understands the waste a little bit better, but still isn't that great. And then you have someone who's experienced it brand new for the first time. And those stories weave in and out. And honestly, dude, it's kind of fun to see each one of them bump into each other and find out how they influence each other. So I think really at the core of this first season of Fallout, it's really just well done, intersecting storylines. I mean, you could apply this to any universe you want, and I think it'll work. But when you take what Fallout has established, and it's just this massive, like, Halloween bucket full of candy, and no matter what you reach in and pull out, it's going to be fun. Yeah. And
absolutely.
And that's what that first season was for me as a diehard. But my wife, on the other hand, she watched it, and she's just as glued to it as I was, and she didn't even understand half the references. And that's what I think is the strength here.
I agree. I'm watching this with my girlfriend, who also has never played a single Fallout video game. And there are times where I'm pretty sure she's never played a video game. She just says she has to make me feel better, or try and connect with us. But again, she's enjoyed every single one of these episodes so far. And I think on a closing bit, because you had brought up things that things that make this special or subtle references and hints to things and nods in the video game. What has been your favorite nod to any part of this franchise? Something that they took directly from the game that isn't necessarily going to be obvious to the reader, to the viewer of the show. They're like, haha, I recognize that, and that's fun.
So very beginning, when Lucy's vault gets attacked by raiders, which, trust me, we're not blowing this for you guys. If you watch any of the commercials, you'll see it. One of the raiders whips his jacket open and pulls out Psychojet, which, if you're a fan of Fallout, you'll know that's a combination of 2 different drugs, Psycho and Jet, and they're just pushed together and taped around, and that's how it's crafted in the game. Yeah. Okay? Meant to be taken at the same time, okay? So both drugs at once. And the raider pulls this thing out, and I'm pointing like Leo DiCaprio at the screen. I'm like, oh, that's Psychojet. He's got Psychojet. And I don't make it because I don't play characters who get addicted to drugs, okay? Like, booze is one thing, but needles, sorry, only stim packs. So, yeah, for me, that was like that moment where I'm like, dude, that's subtle, that's tiny, but that's great. I love it.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, dude. And that's just one example. That's one example of dozens of things that anybody can start to grasp with this series. And honestly, that's why I'm so thrilled for season 2 when we get it within roughly about a year and a half, however long. And for people that aren't fans yet that watch this, I guarantee you they're probably going to start going, I need to play the games now. And we hope you do.
I was just happy to see a 2-headed cow. On that note, we'd like to thank you for listening to Digital Dissection, as well as all that the Dissection crew does for us week after week. Your support really does go a very long way for helping the show. And if you like this episode, why not check us out on YouTube, where we do make weekly videos about our favorite things.
And we also love hearing from you, as always, too. So feel free to message us over at digitaldissectionpodcast@gmail.com, or drop us a comment in our communities across social media. We love your ideas, suggestions, and, well, pretty much anything, so long as it's tastefully done. And until next time, pop culture nerds, keep on dissecting.